What is your current age?
I am 20 years old.
What is your sex?
Male.
What is your sexual orientation?
Straight.
What is your race?
Hispanic.
What is your current relationship status?
In a relationship.
What is your current job?
Unemployed. Full-time student.
What is your current education status?
Full-time student.
Where do you currently live?
Petaluma, California.
Who do you currently live with?
Parents.
Where were you born?
Las Vegas, Nevada.
Where did you primarily grow up for the first half of your life?
Primarily in the state of California, but not any specific area.
How about the second half of your life?
Petaluma, California.
What is your dad's highest education level?
Elementary school.
What is his current occupation?
Business owner. CEO.
What is your mom's highest education level?
High school.
What is her current occupation?
Full-time housewife.
Now I'm going to ask some questions about your family culture. What types of jobs did your dad have when you were growing up?
He always worked in construction.
How did you view that type of job?
It was very labor intensive and long hours, anywhere from 6 a.m. to 5 p.m. or something like that.
Why did you view it very labor intensive?
Because it seems like a job where you have to, a lot of physical strength is required rather than mental mental strength, where you have to move heavy objects from one place to another. Depending on what you're working on, if you're working on a roof of a house, you have to transport heavier materials to the top of the house through ladders and things like that. And also you're working out in the sun all day. It's just a lot of physical work.
What was your dad's role in the household when you were growing up?
He was the provider.
What were some things your dad would usually do around the house?
Usually home improvement, basically. Always kept the house in shape and provided food for us.
How did you view that when you were little?
I viewed it as a correct way to do things, where the man is the head of the house type thing, where he provides for his family.
What types of jobs did your mom have when you were growing up?
My mom worked at Target when I was growing up.
How did you view that?
I saw it as another way of generating income.
What was your mom's role in the household?
Housewife, so she was just providing kind of a little bit more income on the side, and then keeping the house clean, keeping us dressed, keeping us fed, things like that.
How did you view that?
It seemed like a mother thing to do.
What were some values your parents taught you when you were little?
Values, I've learned a ton from them. Some are, I'm trying to think of. I always have difficulties answering this question because it's morals and values. I kind of get them intertwined. I would say values, they always taught me to family first. Always be respectful to your elders. And be humble. Never think you're more than anybody else, as well as never think you're less than anybody else. You know, you kind of have an even feel with everyone. Everyone's human. Respect everyone, and you shall be respected.
Who mainly taught you them?
Both my parents, mainly my dad. My dad was the one that kind of had a higher influence on my values.
Can you give an example of something specific you can remember them telling you?
Never kick a man when he's down, which is basically like never feel better than anybody else, and if someone's doing worse than you, don't push them more into the ground.
What were some values you think directly related to being a boy when you were little?
Values directly to being a boy is probably being the head of the house and having to provide for your family. Was one of the biggest values, I think.
Who do you think mainly taught you that?
My father.
Can you give an example of something he specifically told you?
It was along the bounds of your wife shouldn't have to work. You should provide for your wife and your kids.
All right, now I'm gonna ask some questions about you growing up. What were some games you think you mainly played with your guy friends in school or outside of school?
Outside of school, I did a lot of video games. Physical activities or actual physical games were soccer. Let's see what else. Handball in school. Mainly those. Nothing really.
Why do you think you mainly stuck playing those games with the guys?
They were just part of my interest and my interest group. I just had a lot of fun playing those things, and they were my favorite things to do.
Were there times in school that you would get divided into boy and girl groups?
I believe so, yes.
Can you remember any of them?
I remember this game that we had in elementary school called Tetherball, which was primarily dominated by female players. There were occasionally men who played it too, but it always seemed like the girls were the ones who played it more.
Why do you think that happened?
Again, probably interests, and also the discrimination behind it, where a kid can't be seen playing a girl game because then they'll think it's weird, when in reality it shouldn't be that big of a deal.
During recess, how did your school look in regards to boys and girls?
It was mixed. We had a lot of guys playing, maybe not a lot, but we had guys playing tetherball, as well as girls playing soccer, which was kind of a surprise to many of us. But there were a few girls who were interested in playing soccer with us, and those who found the interest came and asked us to play with us, so they were very welcomed.
Can you remember things that you would compete with other kids in?
Competition, I think, during that time was the West Side Relays. That was probably the main competition throughout the year. And also being the best at handball or something like that.
Who would you mainly compete with?
Usually it was just other males.
Why do you think you competed with those other people?
It just seemed like they were the ones that we were matched up against. Kind of like if you're running a mile, you're going to be put in a men's mile rather than a co-ed or a mixed mile or something like that.
In high school, what were some things you think girls focused on?
High school. In high school, girls, I think, focused a lot on their looks and aesthetics. It seemed like a lot of the girls that I encountered or that I befriended always were worried about getting up early in the morning, making sure their makeup looked great, making sure they were looking great going to school.
Why do you think they focused on that?
I am not entirely sure. I think they just wanted to have a good image of them out there, and they wanted to seem attractive or something like that.
What were some things you think guys focused on in high school?
Guys in high school, well, it just depends who you ask, right? Personally, the ones that I associated with, a lot of them focused on sports because we did sports. It was soccer, football, what else? Swimming was a sport at my school, baseball. I kind of associated with a group of friends that involved all of those. But also a lot of people, like with girls, were focused on their outfits, the things they wore to school, who had the most expensive watch, most expensive shoes, type things like that. And yeah, that's primarily what I think.
Why do you think they focus on those type of things?
Again, to kind of set off an image to other people, to other individuals who they encountered on their daily basis, of like maybe wealth or fashion sense or things like that.
School performance wise, do you think there was a difference between boys and girls in your high school?
I don't think so. I think in my high school, there were occasions where even girls outperformed men in many things, education wise. But there was always a competition of, not necessarily competition, but like friendly motivation to be better than the next person, and the next person just so happened to be a girl. And it was always mixed. There was never a division of male or female.
All right, now I'm going to ask you some questions about masculinity. What does being a man mean to you?
Well, again, with interpretation, it just depends how we're looking at it. If we're talking about it in the sense of primordial existence and where we come from, being a man means being a provider, a hunter and gatherer, making sure that you set order in a household or things like that. But in this current society, I think being a man involves being responsible. I wouldn't even consider being strong being a man. I mean, you can not be strong and still be a man. I think it just comes down to gender now. It's not really much about hunting and gathering as it used to be, or being scavengers like that.
Can you give an example of something that shows you of being a man?
Let's see. It's kind of tough when you think about it, because anything that a man can do, basically a woman can do.
What's something to you that you feel that means being a man that you should do or that you see people do?
I think that accountability and responsibility is a very large part of being a man and being secure of your personality, because it just shows how much of a, how can I say this? It just shows accountability, like I said in the prompt. Being liable and responsible for your actions is something that a lot of people are afraid of, and having the courage to do so is something that is representative of, in my case, being a man.
What do you think has influenced your meaning of being a man?
I think that my roots have had a tremendous influence on my view of being a man. The Hispanic culture has shaped me to think that the man has to be stronger than the woman. They provide more than the woman. They provide for the woman, and things like that.
What are some qualities that come to mind when you think of an alpha male?
The usual, the ones that became a meme. Silverback, strong, tall, masculine, and well fit for the world.
What do you think those qualities represent?
I think originally that they're intended to represent superiority over other beings, among men themselves, and competition amongst men.
Can you give an example of where you might see an alpha male in real life?
Alpha male. I think that in some cultures you can still see the existence of gender division. I have a friend who is of Arabic descent. He's a Middle Eastern, and males basically rule their what do you call it? Their society. Males are the ones who make government choices, make political decisions, and basically lead the way in political affairs. And women, they're allowed to have multiple wives also.
What does masculinity mean to you?
Personally, I think masculinity, I relate it directly to muscles. So masculinity always is just related to someone being well fit, well trained at the gym, super strong, things like that.
Do you feel you have other masculine qualities? Or what are some masculine qualities you feel you have?
I have?
Yes.
I would say my endurance is one of my masculine qualities.
How do you think you show your masculinity to other women?
The way that I show my masculinity would probably be in the way that I explained how being a male would be represented, which is being accountable, being responsible, and always being liable for your actions. I'm not much of a aesthetic kind of person. I don't have the biggest muscles in the world, nor do I have the fastest mile time, but I am very accountable and responsible.
Why do you think you might show that to other women?
I don't necessarily show it directly. I show it through actions where I have been in situations where they're present in the same situation, and they realize my maturity and accountability and to uncalled for what do you call them? Uncalled for circumstances.
How do you think you show your masculinity to other men?
In the same way, they see how I behave when certain circumstances arise and how I treat those circumstances and approach them.
Or why do you think you might show it to other men?
It's just of who I am. I don't show it to, like I mentioned, be better than anyone or to show off. I just show it because they're around me and then they see who I am.
Do you think you avoid showing weakness or emotions to other men?
I do not think so. I don't.
Why do you think that?
I'm an individual who doesn't really care about exterior opinions. If I trust you, I will most likely express to you my feelings, just because I know that there's a trustworthy, and I know that I may need help from you. So whether you're a male or a female, help is help.
So have you showed weakness or emotions to other women as well?
Yes.
Do you think there's a difference between sharing that stuff between women and men then?
I do not think so. Like I said before, a cry for help is a cry for help. It doesn't matter what gender you are. If you need help and a male can provide you the help or a female can provide you the help, the emotional help that you may need, it's fair game.
What does femininity mean to you?
I think it's the representation of female. Kind of like having female traits where they're rich in offspring. They're kind of the basis of our society, where they shape who we become in our future. Thanks to them, we are well raised. Well, some of us. Thanks to them, we males understand how females might behave, as well as how emotionally different we are from them.
Do you think you have any feminine qualities?
Yes, I think so. I think all men do.
What do you think they are?
I think being compassionate towards other individuals is one of those. Being sympathetic, as well as being understanding. A lot of those things, and they're mainly emotional, come from traits that my mother may have shown me, examples that she may have showed me.
Do you think you purposely try not to show them, or they just come out as natural?
I don't purposely try to show them, but if they don't have to come out, they won't. Normally, if I see someone who is going through a rough time, I will show sympathy for them. I will try to be compassionate, and I will try to understand the situation and help them better themselves, just for their sake of being.
What comes to mind when you think of girly?
Girly. When that exact word comes to mind, I think of my little sister, who likes to play with dolls and stuff like that. You know, it's not something that I would see as bad.
Mm-hmm. Okay, when you grow up, what is your ideal career?
I would like to be a structural engineer.
Why?
Ever since I was a kid, I have been fascinated by how structures work and how we are able to develop immense skyscrapers out of nothing, and how we can use the world around us to evolve and innovate previous buildings into incredible, fascinating new buildings. We can make anything we set our minds to, thanks to science and technology.
What do you think influenced you wanting to become that then?
I think that my strength in mathematics played a huge part in it, because growing up, I was always, fluent in math language, and I was never an artist, so I couldn't be an architect. And I always told myself that, although I loved architecture, I loved working with houses and designing new homes, I found engineering more interesting, because it also involved math, and it showed me how the world works around us. And it was just incredible from the moment that I learned about it, and I just decided to stick to it.
What are some jobs you think mainly men have in our society?
Men jobs. Let's see. Garbage disposal companies. I think that the people that go around driving the big old trucks are mainly men. Water treatment plants are mainly men. Construction workers, a lot of them are emphasized on men. Even athletics, primarily it is men, unless you're talking about tennis and Serena Williams is involved. Athletics, we see that the NBA, the NFL, and the MLS are a lot more present in our society than women's sports are.
Why do you think this happens?
I have no clue. I think it's just the way society has been worked and how people have been doctrined to believe a certain way, and it has just been handed down generation past generation.
What are some jobs you think women usually have in our society?
Usually women have jobs along the lines of housewives, which is seemingly decreasing, I think. Working at retail stores, restaurants, let's see, teachers, healthcare providers, along those lines.
Why do you think that happens?
Again, I think it is just in our society to kind of lean a certain direction. Kind of like how parents usually teach, or not teach, but tell a kid, a boy, that they can be an engineer, while they tell a girl that they can be a nurse or a teacher or things like that, when in reality one can be either one.
When you grow up, what is your ideal family setup?
Is that like family household size and stuff like that?
Yeah.
I would like to have probably around 2 to 3 to 4 maybe kids, wife, and a couple pets.
Who do you think would take care of the kids mostly?
It would just depend. I think mostly would be my wife.
Would you say you would work more then?
I think it just depends, I guess, on... Personally, I would like a setup where I would work more. But sometimes you can't make a woman think that they can't work or anything like that. You know, we're all allowed independent thought and pursuit of our own happiness.
So would your goal be to become the main income earner for your family?
Yes.
How would you want costs at home to be divided when you have a household?
I would say, if possible, 90-10, but realistically maybe 70-30.
So you would pay for most of it?
Yes.
So how would you think work around the house would be done?
I think that it would be a cooperation of both. Whenever we each have free time, kind of work on things around the house and work on keeping laundry clean, meals, and all that good stuff.
So would you want your wife to take care of most of the housekeeping and the kids, since you do expect to work more?
Yeah.
What are some contributions you are going to want from your partner?
I think just taking care of the kids and the culinary aspect of household, because I can't cook.
What are some things you think you're going to want your partner to help you out with?
To help me is to maintaining an organized schedule, although that is it differs from person to person. But organization is definitely something that I feel like females would be stronger in. And so that's something I definitely would need help with.
So overall, what do you think are some things that have influenced your outlook on your future in regards to your goals and your relationship and how you want your household to be structured?
It has been shaped my entire life. I have always grown up with the example of my father being the main head of household. But I have also, um, through dating, through having a girlfriend, I have learned that it's okay to do things differently. Um, it has shaped me to see that maybe it's not all about the men being head of the household. It's about sharing and creating a home where both of you are equally head of the household, or heads of the household, I should say.